Hello and welcome to Wooveboxing, the channel all about the Woovebox. I will be making a video like this for all sequencer pages, so if you don't want to miss the next one, consider hitting the subscribe button. Today we're going to talk about the amplitude page of the Woovebox. So how do you get to it? Well, from the sequencer, you turn the encoder to the right until you see amplitude. And quick refresher, each key that is lit is a parameter, and to change that parameter, you hold it down and turn the encoder. And if you want to see the full name of the parameter, you just hold it down. The Woovebox has two amplitude envelopes, one for each oscillator. So I have turned down oscillator 2 to 0, and we're just using oscillator 1. The first four parameters are going to be the attack, decay, sustain, and release parameters for oscillator 1. If you don't know what an ADSR envelope is, I will leave a video in the description, but here is a quick summary. Attack sets the time it takes for the signal to rise from 0 to 100% volume. So right now it's set to 0, which means that we get to full volume right away. But if we make it slower, let's say 3 seconds, now when I hit it, it takes 3 seconds to get there. The decay is the time it takes for the signal to fall from 100% amplitude to the designated sustain level. Right now I have 173. Let's set the sustain level to 0. Now we can hear the decay stage better. Short decay. And you can get crazy and have like a 10-second decay stage if you would like, which we're not going to do. And sustain sets the amplitude level produced when a key is held down. So if I get out of the oscillator page and hold down the key, the sound dies. Why is that? Because my sustain was at 0. But if I put it at, let's say this, and hold a key down, it will keep playing at that level. Let's make the decay stage a little bit shorter so we can hear it better. And if I make the amplitude a little bit less, the sustain a little bit less loud, let's say 20. And release sets the time it will take once you release the key for the sound to die out. So right now I have it at, if I have it at 0, it sounds like this. So I can add a little bit of release, let's say this. Now what's very interesting is that the Woovebox has two amplitude envelopes, one for each oscillator. So let's check out something interesting you can do with two different envelopes. First of all, let's raise the volume of oscillator 2 so we can hear it. So now we can hear both oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. But what we can do, if we go to the amplitude page, I'm going to skip this row for now. This is the LFO for oscillator 1, and we're going to skip to this row, which is the same as the first row, attack, decay, sustain, release, except for oscillator 2. So the first thing I want to show you is that right now we're hearing a click. Yes. So how would I get rid of that? I can go into the amplitude setting and set like an attack of maybe 1 on the envelopes. And now, so one thing that could be interesting is if we had a longer decay, and then for the deeper part of the patch, which is oscillator 1, and then we use a plucky kind of, maybe something like, now we get this kind of pitched beginning, this like high-pitched sound, but just in the beginning of the patch. But yeah, it's very fun to see the different combinations of sounds you can mix between oscillator 1 and 2 with different envelopes. Okay, let's go back to the amplitude page and look at the LFO. So to look at the LFO, I'm going to set the sustain to 127 so we can hear, and I'm going to turn down oscillator 2 as well. So now, if I hold down the key, you can hear it. So what is an LFO? An LFO is a mechanism that will modulate a parameter for you. And in this case, the modulated parameter will be amplitude. Amplitude for oscillator 1 and amplitude for oscillator 2. The Woovebox has a total of 4 LFOs, 2 amplitude LFOs, 1 filter LFO, and 1 pitch LFO. But today we're just going to cover the LFOs in the amplitude page. The first setting is the LFO wave. So right now it's set to triangle, let's leave it at that, but you can change it. You can have noise, sine, triangle, a saw wave, or a square wave. Okay, we're going to go with a triangle. In order for you to be able to hear the LFO, we're going to have to turn on the depth. Right now the depth is set to 0, so let's turn that to, let's say, yeah. So now you can hear that this LFO is vibrating my sound. This is actually tremolo. It's vibrating my sound, and what it's doing is it's turning up and down the volume according to a rate and a depth. So we set the depth, we set it to 70. Let's set it all the way so you can hear that. It's kind of a lot, huh? Okay, let's scale it back a little bit. There you go. So the next parameter is the LFO rate. Right now it's set to 0. If it's set to 0, it's set to off. As you can see, even though I have the depth up, nothing is happening. So we can turn that to the right, and this will be the length of steps. So this will say, for example, this will be 1 bar LFO. Very nice. And let's go with 2 steps. And if you go to the left, you're now dividing steps. So this would be half a step. And then it's just going to get faster from here. And these can get real fast. And the last parameter is sample and hold. This is a classic sample and hold behavior. It takes whatever the state of the LFO is, and it holds that until the next time it checks for the state. So it will usually slow it down. And there are a couple more LFO settings in the oscillator pages. Key 6 is the amplitude LFO retrigger, and key 7 is for the pitch LFO retrigger. We're not going to talk about the pitch LFO in this video. You have free, which means the LFO will be free running. You have retrigger, which means the LFO will be retriggered every time you press a key, giving you a predictable sound. And then you have conditional. So if I put it on conditional, you'll notice you don't hear it. But let's do this. I'll just put a couple notes down, and what we're going to do, we're going to, on these two, we're going to set up a condition to play the LFO. There you go. So now it's only going to play the LFO on this note and this note. It's like conditional tremolo. Very cool. And now going back to the amplitude page, this bottom row is the LFO for oscillator 2. So you have your envelope and your LFO for oscillator 1, and your envelope and your LFO for oscillator 2. I made a fun little patch using the LFOs, different LFOs and envelopes on oscillator 1 and 2, and it sounds like this. And that is the end of this video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thank you so much for being here, and ciao ciao.